It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. We are on the line again with Joe Yogerst. We had him on a couple of weeks ago talking about his new book, 100 Drives, 5,000 Ideas. This is one of three in the 5,000 Ideas series. And well, I needed to get Joe on again because these books are so fantastic. Joe, good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. And the interesting part is for this, we're focusing upon 50 states, 5,000 ideas. You must have so much fun putting these things together.
I do. I have to admit that I do have fun.
Well, tell me about this book, 50 States, 5,000 Ideas. You break it down state by state, don't you?
Yes, and also the 14 Canadian provinces and territories. But that's a bit of a mouthful to call it 50 states and 14 provinces and territories.
Well,
so we just narrowed it down to 50 states. It was an idea that National Geographic hatched really going back about 5 years ago. And they offered me the entire book, which was fairly unusual at that time because they usually put together their books as a team of 5 or 6 writers because they take a year to write, and you have to dedicate basically a whole year of your life to one project. But they gave me this, and I thought, sure, I'll do that. 50 states plus Canada, yeah, I can dedicate a year of my life to that. It was a brilliant idea on their part. I mean, I know they test market everything anyways, but I don't think they realized how well this book was going to do. It's been on the travel bestseller list basically for 2.5 years now. It's never left the bestseller list, and it got as high as number 4 out of all Amazon books at one point in time, behind Michelle Obama, John Grisham, and Stephen King.
And Joe Yogerst. Well, let's just throw him right in there. My goodness
Exactly.
gracious.
I thought, wow, I've really hit the big time now. If I can be mentioned in the same breath with those three, then I've hit the big time book-wise. But it was just a brilliant idea, and it wasn't my idea. It was theirs, and I just happened to be lucky enough to be the writer they gave it to. And that rolled over into 100 parks and 100 drives, and we just finished 100 cities, which will be out next year. And I've just started working on 100 trails, which will be out in 2021. So eventually there'll be 5 books in this series, but 50 States is the one that kicked it all off.
You're a well-traveled man. Well, let's talk about the fact that 50 states really does seem appropriate for this year, 2020, because there are so many people who are going to have to find, as part of their vacation plans, things to do in their own neighborhoods. So let's go to Pennsylvania, where we find ourselves today, and find out some of the great highlights that we'll find in your book.
Well, you start with great cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh that are really incredible in their own right. Philadelphia because of the history and also the specialty foods there.
Always a big part. That's always a big part.
That's always a big part. Yes, you can't. You got to eat. You got to eat Philly food when you go to Philly. So, and Pittsburgh, because I think of it, I've always thought of it, well, since the 1990s, as one of the great American Renaissance cities, an amazing location, amazing scenery, its own part of American history, down where the rivers come together, and nearby sites that I find really fascinating, like Fort Necessity, which is right outside the city, south of Pittsburgh, where George Washington's career almost came to an end before it started.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fascinating part of the George Washington story that happened just outside of Pittsburgh, that he was initially really an incredible failure who turned things around, basically using his own wits and thinking on his feet in his early 20s, right? And as an early commander during the French and Indian War. Another place that's very close to you guys is it's a made-up name, the Pennsylvania Wilds, but that people in, I think it's 8 different counties in north-central Pennsylvania got together in the early part of this century and thought, how can we get more people to come up to the Allegheny Plateau? And they came up with this name called the Pennsylvania Wilds, but I think it's highly appropriate for an area that has incredible state parks, again, a special kind of history that's related to those mountains, especially the history of timber, of the lumber industry that was up there. And I like the fact that the Pennsylvania Wilds, that north-central part of Pennsylvania, is an incredible example of how an environment that's been totally wrecked can bounce back. Because in the 1880s and 90s, they were calling that area the Pennsylvania Desert because it was so deforested and there was so much erosion.
Yeah.
And once the trees went away, the timber industry had to go somewhere else, and conservation started to take over. State parks were established very early on around either side of World War I, and the area has bounced back incredibly to the point where you would think it's always been that kind of pristine wilderness, and you didn't realize that 130, 150 years ago it was just devastated. So there are some amazing places in Pennsylvania that the rest of the country needs to know about, but I also think Pennsylvanians maybe don't know about them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And people across the nation are discovering things in their own neighborhoods that they never knew were there. You take us on that tour, no matter where you go, you're going to find something. And it's not just this state that folks can do, because since we're so, we're right here in the Pittsburgh area, we've got Ohio just an hour away. We've got West Virginia an hour or so away. Maryland is very nearby. It becomes a real regional thing. And I would guess, and Joe, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I would guess that the 50 States book really has had a resurgence in sales at this time because of 2020 and the pandemic.
It has. It's still up, and I check almost every day now just to see where it is. It was number 4 in travel books yesterday. It goes up and down between there and somewhere in the top 10, and I think the 100 Parks book was number 11 on the travel bestseller list yesterday. Road Trips is, the Drives book is just basically got launched in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
And at one point in time, all 3 of them were in the top 18, top 20 of travel books in the U.S. So, but 50 states, yeah. I was kind of wondering at the beginning of the lockdown what's going to happen with book sales, but book sales have boomed because people are at home and they need something to do. And I was again wondering about travel book sales. Are they going to be the same way? But people apparently want to armchair travel when they're home during lockdown. And sales of not just my book, but travel books in general have been great during the lockdown. People planning their future trips, and that's what this is all about. And something I would like to say about 50 States is it's really not so much written for people in those states where you're living, but if you live in Iowa and you want to go to Florida, I think it's a great resource for deciding where you want to go in Florida. Or if you live in Maine and you want to go to Oregon, it's a great resource for deciding where you want to go to Oregon. And because it is an ideas book, it's not an in-depth guide. Otherwise, it would be thousands of pages. But it's an ideas book about sitting back and dreaming. This is where I'm going to go, either this summer in my car or on some future trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So the survey says that about 1 out of 3 Americans plan to take a road trip this summer, and well, this can help them do it. 50 states, 5,000 ideas. I got to let you go because I know you've got somebody else you need to talk to. But, Joe, it's been good to catch up with you again, and we'll do it again, okay?
Definitely, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, have a great day today.
You too. Stay safe.
Bye now.
Bye.
Joe Yogerst, and the book is 50 States, 5,000 Ideas. It goes along with his books 100 Drives, 5,000 Ideas. That's the new one this year. And 100 Parks, 5,000 Ideas. It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, 101.1 FM and AM 1160. AM 1160.